Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please support my channel by contributing to my Patreon account so that I can continue making the audiobook series. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, Volume 3, The Battle of Hattin, the Conquest of Jerusalem, and the Third Crusade. Start of Part 3 of Chapter 1. A generation that fought for the sake of Allah. Salah ad-Deen's generation did not come from nowhere. It was preceded by academic and educational efforts based on the principles of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That generation, which Allah honored with the victory at Hattin, had many of the qualities of the victorious group, among the most important of which are: it followed the truth. The victorious group adheres to and follows the truth in ways that all other Muslims do not. Among the prominent aspects of the truth to which it adheres until it becomes victorious are the following. 1. Adherence to correct belief and to the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, and avoidance of innovation and its proponents. They are the followers of the Sunnah. Salah ad-Din and the Muslims who were with him were the ones who put an end to the Ismaili Shiite Fatimid state. 2. Adherence to guidance and outward behavior, such as in public, that is in accordance with the Prophet's way that has come down to us through the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and being free of the causes of evil doing, suspicion, and haram desires. 3. Persistence in jihad with one's life and possessions, enjoining what is good, forbidding what is evil, and establishing justice among all people. And 4. Persistence in striving to attain all means, whether material or moral, required for victory, and seeking to acquire all qualities by means of which the believers may receive the help of Allah. There is no doubt that they can only prevail when they adhere to true jihad on one hand and strive their utmost in preparing the means that lead to victory on the other. This is what Salah ad-Din and the other leaders with him did. Striving to attain those means is in fact part of adhering to Islamic law, as the Sharia enjoins using all possible material means, such as manufacturing, weaponry, planning, management, and so on. No one should imagine that victory comes without that, because making good use of what Allah has provided is one of the requirements of adhering to Allah's commands. It established the commands of Allah. This characteristic appears prominently in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam description of this group. They are a group that establishes the command of Allah, and their name in Arabic is at-Taifa al-Mansura, which means the victorious group. Salah ad-Din was distinguished by his work to carry the banner of Dawah, for he called people to Allah and to his religion and laws. He upheld the Sunnah of Allah's Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, striving to spread the Sunnah among people by all possible and legitimate means. He devoted the state's resources to that, rebutting specious arguments against Ahl Sunnah and refuting those who went against the Sunnah. Salah ad-Din's state also enjoined what is good and forbade what is evil. Members of the government did this by taking action and speaking out, or at least by denouncing evil in their hearts, and opposing all deviation that occurred among the Muslims, whatever type it was, political, social, economic, academic, or ideological. It established the duty of jihad for the sake of Allah. The victorious group is described in the Prophet ﷺ hadith as fighting for the truth, or fighting to establish the command of Allah. Salah ad-Din and his army established lawful jihad for the sake of Allah and fought the enemies of Allah among the disbelievers and others. It was patient and steadfast. The main characteristic that Allah has bestowed on the victorious group is that it is patient. You have seen and will see how Salah ad-Din and his troops were armed with beautiful patience in their jihad, and the forces of injustice were unable to divert them from their path or the goal for which they were striving. The messenger described these as not being harmed by those who reject them or by those who oppose them, and they will not worry about those who oppose them. These words of the Prophet ﷺ refer to these strivers who know their aims and goals and follow their path. They do not look at the opposition of those who oppose them, the obstacles placed by those who seek to undermine them, or the rejection of enemies and haters. They face all these troubles with patience, steadfastness, and certain faith. These attributes, which are mentioned in the hadiths describing the victorious group, applied to the generation of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. Salah ad-Din gave beneficial advice to his troops. One day he said, "Realize that you are the troops and defenders of Islam today. You should know that the blood, wealth, and children of the Muslims are your responsibility, and Allah, the glorified and exalted, will question you about them on the day of resurrection. This enemy has no one among the Muslims who will confront him and protect the land and the people except you. If you turn away, Allah forbid, then the enemy will take the land and destroy the people. He will take property and children and women. He will worship the cross in the mosques, and the Quran and prayer will disappear from them. All of that will be your responsibility. You are the ones who took on all of that. You consumed the Muslims' wealth in order to ward off their enemy from them and support their weak ones. The fate of the Muslims in all lands is dependent on you, and their safety depends on you." Seeking help from the scholars and consulting them about war and administrative matters. Salah ad-Din stayed close to the scholars, sat with them, and consulted them concerning war and administrative matters. He listened to their advice and appreciated it, and relied on some of them with regard to matters of the state. The scholar who spent the most time with him, at times of ease and of hardship, at home and when traveling, was Al-Qadi al-Fadil. Think about Salah ad-Din's words and his analysis of the most important cause of victory, after the help of Allah, when he said, "No land was conquered by means of the troops. Rather, it was conquered by means of the words of Al-Fadil." Al-Qadi al-Fadil offered him sound advice and wise counsel. He was sincere in giving him advice at times of war, in planning and on various issues. Ibn Kathir said, Al-Qadi al-Fadil was in Egypt, running the affairs of state and preparing for the Sultan whatever he needed of wealth. He built up the fleet and wrote letters for the Sultan. Salah ad-Din gained full support from the scholars and jurisprudents. He would consult them and seek their advice. After his great victory at Hattin, Salah ad-Din decided to complete the jihad against the Crusaders and take the cities of Greater Syria back from them. A number of scholars took part in these conquests, as we shall see below. Salah ad-Din sought the help of the scholars and jurisprudents in preparing the Ummah for jihad, by explaining to them the aims of jihad in Islam and the necessity of adhering to them and striving for them. The scholars played an essential role in raising the morale of the troops at Hattin and elsewhere. A strong relationship with Allah. Salahuddin was a man who worshipped and supplicated a great deal, and had great hope in the support and help of Allah. He would enjoin the people to do good and forbid them to do evil, and urge them to obey and worship Allah. He led the way in that regard, and gave them the opportunity to purify their souls and occupy themselves with reading the Quran, pondering its meanings and memorizing it. He was keen to pray night prayers and recite a great deal of remembrance and glorification of Allah, and he urged his commanders and troops to do likewise. He would sit with the scholars and read the Quran to them, and listen to their commentary. He would sit with the scholars of Hadith to learn from them the understanding of the Hadiths. He would listen to the jurisprudents and scholars, and he would bring scholars, jurisprudents, and Quran commentators to teach the army the book of their Lord, educate them about their religion, and strengthen their relationship with their Lord. He would command his troops in their tents to pray the night prayer and to remember Allah a great deal. He would check on his soldiers' tents, and if he found a tent whose occupants were being heedless about praying night prayers or reading the Quran, he would wake them up and remind them of the necessity of remembering, worshipping, and obeying Allah a great deal. These things are among the most important factors of victory against the enemy. Turning to Allah after making preparations. Another of the causes of his victory was that after availing himself of the means, he would turn to Allah the Almighty, asking Him for help and support. He would turn to Allah and supplicate a great deal at times of calamity, and he was sincere in his supplications and beseeching of Allah. Al-Qadi al-Fadil, who accompanied him on his journeys and in his jihad, said of his supplication and his attitude in supplication. He would give in charity and conceal it before conversing with his Lord in his prostrations, and he would say, "My God, I did not leave any earthly means of supporting your religion, but I used it, and there is nothing left but turning to you, clinging to your rope, relying on your bounty. You are sufficient for me and the best disposer of affairs." I saw him prostrating with tears rolling down onto his grey beard, and then onto his mat, but I could not hear what he was saying. Allah soon answered his supplication, and troubles befell the Crusaders, who were turned back in defeat caused by the Lord of Lords. Yes, it was true dependence and trust in Allah, supplication from the depths of his heart to his Lord, who says, "And whosoever fears Allah, and keeps his duty to Him, He will make a way for him to get out from every difficulty, and He will provide for him from where he does not expect it." Quran, chapter 65, verse 2 and 3. And whosoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. Indeed, Allah will accomplish His purpose. Allah has already set for everything a decreed extent. Quran, chapter 65, verse 3. And when my servants ask you concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the invocations of the supplicant when he calls upon me. So let them respond to me and believe in me, so that they might be rightly guided. Quran, chapter 2, verse 186. And your Lord says, "Call upon me, I will respond to your invocation." Quran, chapter 40, verse 60. Success of Salah ad-Deen's intelligence operations. Salah ad-Deen managed to penetrate Crusader lines with his intelligence operations just before the Battle of Hattin. He managed to win over the wife of Bohemond III, Prince of Antioch, the Lady Sibylla, who was secretly in contact with Salah ad-Deen and kept him informed of the plans and movements of the Crusaders as they happened, at dawn on the day of Hattin. The historian Ibn al-Athir confirms this and says that the Princess of Antioch corresponded with Salah ad-Din, exchanged gifts with him, and informed him of a great deal of the information to which she was privy. Abu Shamah says, Madame Sibylla, the wife of the Prince of Antioch, was known to be on the Sultan's side and was a spy for him against the enemy. She sent him gifts and advised him, and spied on their secrets, and the Sultan honored her for that, and gave her the most precious of gifts. One of the causes of his victory at Hattin was that he paid proper attention to intelligence gathering, thus protecting against surprise acts of aggression on the Crusaders' part. Sun Tzu said, pointing out the importance of this, "If you know the enemy, and you know yourself, then there is nothing to make you fear the consequences of 100 battles. If you know yourself and do not know the enemy, then you will face defeat in every battle." Salah ad-Din's brilliance was reflected in his creation of a strong intelligence network within the Crusader ranks, which ensured that news of their movements reached him quickly on an ongoing basis. Reasons for victory that were the fault of the Crusaders. The Crusaders were divided among themselves in this battle. When the Count of Tripoli thought that they should not fight in the place chosen by Salah ad-Din, Reynaud de Chatillon, the ruler of Iraq, stood up to him and accused him of being a coward and collaborating with the Muslims, and of spreading propaganda in their favor. He also accused him of being soft towards the Muslims because his wife was under siege by Salah ad-Din and the Muslims in the citadel of Tiberias. Hence we see that when the opportunity to flee presented itself, Raymond III and his entourage fled from the battlefield and left the other Crusaders at the most crucial point in the fighting. He also left his wife in this difficult situation. They stupidly and knowingly fell into the trap that Salah ad-Din set for them, even though the Count of Tripoli had alerted them to it. Their morale had collapsed due to the war of attrition, and at the beginning of this and subsequent battles, in which they found themselves facing the Muslims, who remained strong, they were unable to ward off defeat and harm. Evil-doing and immorality was rife with these Crusaders, and debauchery was widespread among them. A large number of them had come to plunder, pillage, and shed blood unjustly. They had no morals and could never attain victory over the believers in Allah, who were striving in jihad. Concerning this, Gustave Le Bon said in his book The Civilization of the Arabs, "It may be noted that these invaders had no morals or values. They were immoral evildoers, promiscuous and corrupt. They were the enemies and killers of civilization, as we do not see anyone among them in the promised land except heretics, disbelievers, thieves, adulterers, murderers, traitors, jokers, debauched monks, and promiscuous nuns." Abul-Hasan an-Nadawi on the secret behind Salah ad-Din's success. Sheikh an-Nadawi delivered a speech to the Muslim World League in which he said, "The only solution to the issue of Palestine is for a new Salah ad-Din to emerge on the stage of Palestine and on the stage of jihad once again." What was the secret behind the astounding victory of Salah ad-Din that dazzled the world and changed the course of history. The secret is that he was a believing Muslim, a follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He knew nothing but the language of the Quran, the language of faith, the language of paradise. The Muslims were and still are like that. The Muslims up until today, even though foolish materialistic thinking and modern education have affected them, still do not understand anything except the language of the Quran. The Muslims in the East and in the West, no matter how many languages they speak, no matter how smart they are, no matter how brilliant and clever they are, until today they still do not understand anything but the language of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in whom they believe as an eternal prophet, as one who raised the banner of holy jihad. They do not understand anything but the language of the Quran. Talk to the Muslims in the language of the Quran, my brothers, not in the language of politics. Stir up in them compassion and faith with the words of jihad, with the words of longing for martyrdom, for they still understand this language well. The secret behind Salah ad-Deen's winning control over people's hearts and souls was that he understood this secret. The Muslims are not motivated by anything except jihad. They gathered under this banner of faith different types of leadership and different types of people, and he managed to unite the divided and scattered Muslim world, which was divided against itself. How did he manage to unite this vast world with its multiple elements, multiple cultures, and multiple madhabs? How did he manage to unite the Muslim world during this dark and critical period beneath the banner of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He did not raise the banner of Arab nationalism. Let me say, I am Indian by origin. I am Indian by culture. I am a man who was born and raised in India. But I believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I believe in the Quran. There are millions of souls who look up to you Arabs, feel a deep emotional attachment to you, and would sacrifice their lives, well-being and security for your sake. A big massacre took place recently in India, in Ahmedabad, and what was the reason? It was because of a large Muslim gathering that was held to support the issue of Palestine. This massacre and huge sectarian turmoil took place because the Muslims in Ahmedabad came together from distant lands and crossed the sea. They do not understand Arabic, but they organized this historical gathering to defend the issue of Palestine. This is clear proof that there are sincere souls, the extent of whose sincerity is known to no one except Allah. Sincere, believing souls who do not know the language of politics or the language of diplomacy, but they know the language of faith, they know the language of compassion, they know the language of the Quran. You possess resources that neither America nor Russia possesses. That is the resource of faith, the resource of strong faith. This resource exists, but it needs to be stirred up. It needs to be harnessed in the sincerest manner. End of part 3 of chapter 1.